Loud quitting. You might now think, no, Niels, it's silent quitting. We talked about that. And yes, we did. However, now we have a new tendency and it's called loud quitting. What is the difference to silent quitting? What's happening here? What is the new trend that just happened that was frequently published in the media just recently? Yes, you're right. We had silent quitting before, and now we have to talk about loud quitting and what that means, how you deal with it, and also what is the core reason why this happens. So first, silent quitting means that people think of quitting your organization, but they do not. However, what they do is they only work according to the plan, which means according to the working contract that you have, not a single bit more than you agreed in the contract. And of course, as you know, that is not a sustainable way how to lead an organization. It's also not very satisfying for your organization. You need, especially in moments of stress, people who step up to the plate, people who are willing to do more, people who are willing to walk the so-called extra mile, people who do a bit more than what is agreed in the contract. And you expect that as some sort of colleague service, sort of friendship service, however you might call it. It's on a very informal level, but silent quitting stops all that. Silent quitting means they do exactly what's in the contract, nothing more. However, now we have people who are doing loud quitting. And loud quitting means they are leaving your organization. They are openly criticizing your leaders. They are openly criticizing what is going wrong, and they are openly criticizing what you need to change but didn't in the last couple of years. And then, of course, there's a massive escalation. You have more people quitting the organization normally as a result of other people quitting. And one of the newest studies we just recently had, 2/3 of the people in Canada, by the way, often due to not being allowed to work remotely, 2/3 of the people in Canada are on the way or thinking of quitting their organization in the next couple of years. And by the way, when you're now thinking, oh, it's way better with us, look into actual studies. When you look into different countries, it is pretty common that you normally have about 1/5, they are completely demotivated, and another 40% are not doing too well. So it is pretty much that you have a lot of people who are not in the state you want them to be in your organization. So please be honest to you. The question is, what can we do? How do we deal with that? And there are three main factors. The first one is a content-driven factor. It's about the expertise. You at least need to have a certain level of expertise of what the people do you are leading. You at least need to have an overview of what they do. I give you a couple of examples. So first, if you tell people in bookkeeping what's coming next and what they need to do, and you have no clue about bookkeeping, they are not listening to you because they are sick of people thinking that bookkeeping is an easy job that anyone can do. It reminds me of, and that's the second example, people who go to the doctor. Doctors are professionally trained. In most countries, it takes 5 to 10 years to be allowed to deal with medical situations of patients. And in many countries, it is not even well paid anymore. So you show up with no qualifications in the field and you tell the doctor, what is it you have? What is your treatment? What medication do you need? It is beyond ridiculous. And you tell these people who are professionally qualified while you are not what they need to do. And of course, they do not follow you. Another example, of course, as you can spot by the charming accent I have, I am German, so I have to talk about engineering. Of course. So when you look into what engineers do, often people who have a background in, let's say, economics, business administration, whatever else. There's a certain conflict, a task needs to be fulfilled, and the engineer says it's technically impossible. And then the person with no engineering qualification says, well, it has to work. And then they say, yeah, it's technically impossible. Yeah, but it has to work. Back, forth. And then often the people with the non-engineering background says, well, it has to work, full stop. We support you anywhere we can. And of course, the engineer or the engineers as a team then ask, okay, do we get more time? No. Do we get more money, more budget in the project? No. Do we get more resources like staffing? No. So we support you where we can is one of these one-liners no one takes seriously anymore. What you need to do, and that is the first factor, how to prevent loud quitting from happening, honestly deal with the situation. And I give you 2 examples from real-world practice from my clients. At one of my companies, one of my client companies, they had a salary raise, and the salary raise is, drumroll, 1.5%. And you might now think, well, that is way lower than the inflation. And yes, it is. And what happened before this was announced, management stepped up, went public and said, look, this is the numbers we have. This is the revenue. This is the profit. We are far away from where we should be. We are far away from where we were before the pandemic. We are far away from being anywhere in the safe zone. we actually wanted to do no salary raise, but that felt really unfair. So we do 1.5% for all employees. However, for senior management, executives, and the board, nothing. And that was accepted. Although 1.5% does not cover the gap, it was accepted by the people that this is a deal they can live with. How you cannot do it and must not do it is, and that happened to one of the people who are in my direct circle of friends. He's working for a large corporation. The corporation did tremendously well before the pandemic, even better during the pandemic, and still great after the pandemic. And now the leader said, oh, we did so much for you. We really talked to the executives and the partners and everything. So there is a salary raise of 3% for you. Ta-da! And of course, people ask if this is a joke. Where does the money go? We are all doing very well. It's publicly accessible that we are doing very well. Why don't we get the cover of the inflation gap, which, depending on the region where they have locations, is somewhere in between 5 to 8.5%? And then they said, oh, where the money goes is confidential. And of course, this statement of confidential was the point where very loud quitting happened. And the cost for this employee turnover is way, way more than the salary raise that you should have given them in the first place. So that's aspect number one. When it comes to expertise, you need to know how to deal with critical situation, and the dealing, how you should deal with it is an honest approach to the situation and tell them that's the deal. The second aspect is a personal one. Leadership is something you learn. It is not something you just magically get into your brain and suddenly it's all brilliant. So what you need is, and I give you two options now for larger and for mid-sized and small organizations, what you should do is 360-degree feedback, which means you take 3, 5, or 10 people on the hierarchical pyramid who are below the person you want to feedback, on the same level of the person you want to feedback, and higher than the person you want to get feedback on, and they all work with that person. They all give anonymous feedback. If you want to be really good, you could also include, if that's applicable, how they deal with suppliers, external people, service providers, etc. And then you make way better decisions who should be the next leader and who needs which kind of training, coaching, or whatever else you need to change about the situation in which you are. When you now say we are not big enough for that, we're not even enough people, and please check if you are unable to do that, or are you unwilling to do that. Please distinguish between these two. If you're unable to do that, then you at least need to do annual appraisal interviews, talk to your employees at least once a year, which is the bare minimum. Way better is every 6 months or every quarter, which is what you should do. And of course, you should do pit stop feedback every month, which means an informal talk to people. And by the way, in a place where no one else can listen, that is important. Pit stop feedback, informal feedback every month, 5 to 15 minutes. Nothing will be documented there, while appraisal interviews or annual talks or every 6 to 3 month talks will be documented. So you need to talk and then derive steps from that. So what happens if you achieve these goals? X, Y, Z is happening. What happens if you do not achieve these goals? X, Y, Z is happening then. When people realize all these talks are in vain, it's just done because you need to do it. No one knows why. Nothing happens out of that. It is not considered for any kind of promotion or demotion. Then people will consider it pointless for a reason. And then loud quitting again happens. So the second aspect is a personal one with the leader. The third one is your organization. You have to look at what does the organization stand for? Mission statement, what do you stand for? Vision statement, where do you want to go? Value statement, what are the values of your organization? And please also look at what is it that you claim, what is it that you claim, and what is it that you really live in your organization. There must be an unambiguously clear boundary where you say this is okay and this is not okay. And by the way, same rules for leaders. No insider deals, no dubious networks. Networking is fine, but dubious networks are not. There must be a very clear principle of meritocracy inside your organization. However, when you do not want to have a principle of meritocracy, tell them what is the principle you have. You, for example, could say, our principle is the seniority principle, which, for example, Lufthansa has, which is fine. However, tell them upfront. Seniority principle means that people with more experience will always be preferred due to the amount of years they spend on the job. And that means, especially with seniority principle in place, normally job security is way higher. However, to be promoted to very important jobs takes way longer. Tell people up front what is the principle. because when they don't know what the principle is, your organization looks like it's acting arbitrarily, and that never works. Taken together, if we look at all these factors, loud quitting is a mistake, an error, a result of misconduct from leaders, and a result also of a really bad organizational structure. And of course, sometimes you can claim there are people who just like to argue, like to shout around, who like to cause trouble. And yes, sometimes there are people who have certain situations and like to cause trouble. Some people have mental health issues, which, by the way, often is caused by the organization in which they work. But these are all exceptions to the rule. The rule is loud quitting is a result of a bad organizational structure and bad leaders inside that organization. And it is your fault if you do not do with it. And I now gave you some clues where to start to look at what can you do next. And it's your job to start right now. And of course, there's more. If you now say, hey, Niels, I need to chat with you about that, feel free to send me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we take it from there. Happy to chat with you via email, phone, Zoom, whatever you like. Doesn't cost you a penny, and we take it from there. Thank you very much for the discussions we had in the last weeks. Very, very fruitful, very nice discussion, even with the people who I disagreed with. Very respectful. Thank you very much for that. A couple of people, I mean, we have Pride Month, of course. You have some people yelling into my inbox. Don't expect me to answer to that. Please keep it focused on the topic. Thank you. So, by the way, if you want to talk about very specific, you need someone for training, speaking, or coaching, just let me know. We can talk about that as well. The second step I'd like you to know is there is a chance to talk to me in real life. We have a Q&A session every month. When it will be, you can see in the so-called leadership letter. You go to expert.nb-networks.com, then you register there with your email address, and then you get one email every week, only on Wednesday morning, and it's content only, 100% content, ad-free guarantee. You get free access to all articles, no paywall, nothing. It's just content, no advertising. And there also is the time for the next leadership Q&A, where you can also register for it. And then you can ask me live whatever you like me to ask. The third step, however, is the most important one. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you can make your organization a better one, prevent loud quitting from happening, and also proactively engage with situations that might have ended a bit more challenging if you had not engaged with them in the first place. I wish you all the best implementing these steps in your organization. If you need any help, let me know. Always happy to help. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.